Okay, we're now live, and this is a very special edition of The View from the Top, and we're going to be talking about the impact of coronavirus on global mobility. And I'm delighted that I've got with me today Eric Halverson, much more of whom later, but welcome, good to see you, Eric, all the way from California.
And good
to see you, Eric. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to get people to join in, and we're going to not go live in our discussion for a few minutes. I just want to get people on board. I know lots of people are signing in even as we speak. People are signing in. Could I ask people, as you join the conversation, please can you just notify us, let us know you're there, say, write a comment in the comments box. In particular, could you tell us where you are in the world? I think we want to get as much conversation about this as possible. We want to hear what everyone's, what your experiences are with this awful pandemic that we're facing. So tell us where you are. Give us all that information, where you are, and maybe tell us a little bit about yourself as well. What's going on in your world, in your business at the moment. Or just say hi. We want to know who's here. Okay, so these comments hopefully will start coming through shortly, and we'll see who we've got coming on board.
All right.
Okay, so Eric, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you today?
I'm in California, in Calaveras County, which is up in the foothills of California. I'm on what I call a ranch. I don't know if that's down up here. I've got 600 olive trees, and so I grow olives and make olive oil, and so I'm away from the hustle and bustle of the city, quarantined myself, but not for that. The real reason is I just like to get up into the hills and get away and into the country and get dirty. So this morning I'm having a country and just listen and enjoying the country here. People didn't know California had country, probably. They thought it was all Los Angeles and stuff.
Yeah, no, we can't see the countryside through your door there, but I'll take your word for it.
Let's see, I can open up these blinds behind me if you like, give you a peek. But okay. Yeah, it's country, as a matter of fact.
Cool. Well,
turkeys.
Did you really? Wow. Okay. And who have we got coming on board? So if you're joining the conversation now, please do give us your comments so we can see who's here. And we'll get started in just a couple of minutes once we know who's on board in our conversation today. Okay, so we've got people here coming from all over the world taking part, and what we do want to know is we want to find out where you're from. I see we've got people coming in from America. We've got people coming in from Europe. I'm hearing that I'm getting comments that sadly Eric's video is not as good as mine, but there's not much we can do about that, guys. But hopefully bear with us as we get into this really important discussion.
I'm not as good looking as
anyway, so what I do want to do, we're getting the comments through, so I think we will get started. So as I said, as you come on, please do join the conversation. Please, let us know what you're thinking. We want to know what's going on. One of the points I do want to make straight up is we are not medical experts. We're not going to give you any medical advice. We're not qualified to do it. We're not financial experts either. We're just a couple of guys who've worked in the mobility profession for a long time. And what we really do want to do is talk to you about the impact of everything on the global mobility profession. That's what we're here to do today. So we're looking for your comments, and we want to sort of really discuss with you all the issues that are out there that affect us. Okay, so I mean, I suppose the first thing that I want to raise and get out there as a discussion is this: is we're all fascinated and scared and worried and thinking about the coronavirus at the moment. A few days ago, I think people were saying, you know, it's going to blow over. Maybe it's being a bit over the top. I think people now are more saying there's more of a crisis there. So really, the question, I'm very interested to get your perspective on this, an American perspective from you, Eric, is it a crisis or is there a level of overreaction in there?
Well, I guess my opinion would be a bit of both. Again, we're still finding out virus. You know, my typical rule of thought with regards to anything from the media is don't believe anything until 48 hours later. Let it settle in and find out. I think some of us took that perspective, but it's not decreasing. Here, into and very, but certainly it's been increasing. So, you know, it's in the sense that it's certainly worldwide. It's certainly still growing. You know, as far as a crisis, are we critical results yet? People are saying, well, of course there's not as or the pandemic, but the fact is we're not seeing that many relative to other diseases. So do we discount it? That probably is not. Panic and call it a medical crisis. It's probably, in my mind, too early. It's significant. Take it very, very seriously. That perspective, and hopefully, you know, it certainly seems that most of the governments now have taken that, really treating it as a case scenario. And why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we just say, hey, let's take the conservative approach, treat this as a worst host at that point, but nonetheless respond as if it might. And so that's what I'm seeing, at least that's, you know, have. The financial crisis, that's certainly I think is computer algorithm driven, you know, sentiment driven. Are there realistic financial impacts to this? I'm a bit skeptical of the I also know that I don't know what I don't know, and so I don't want to be provincial in my thinking about it either. So, and we're just kind of watching it play out.
Okay, so I want to get into that a bit more, but before I do, let me just do some shout outs. I see we've got Melissa Weber here from London. And by the way, I'm in Spain today, so we're on all the different different parts of the world. We've got Kimberly Isaac. I see you're there from Leesburg. Umesh Chandra, you're from India. You haven't said exactly where in India, but great to have you here. Let me ask you some questions. Can I just say, where people who are out there, are you who are sort of listening in on LinkedIn Live, are you working from home today, or are you in the office? I'd be quite interested to know. You know, what I'm hearing is more and more companies are telling people to work from home. I was talking to a very large real estate private equity organization earlier today. They said everybody is working at home for the indefinite future. I was talking to one of the accounting firms. They're saying that everyone's working at home. Clearly, not everybody can do that. But the people who are with us today on this call, you know, are you working from home? And have other people in your organization been told, you know, that everybody's working from home? Or is it just you working from home. So I'm very interested to know what's going on there. And then regarding this whole question of the coronavirus itself and whether it's an overreaction, and certainly around the world, we're seeing a number of companies a number of countries are declaring states of emergency. As I said, I'm in Spain today, and we've just declared a state of emergency literally about 2 or 3 hours ago. So I think whether this is a medical crisis or a financial crisis, it is becoming a financial crisis. And the question then is, how long does that financial crisis last? I mean, one of the issues that I do want to get onto, and I'll be very interested in people's comments, is which industries do we think are going to be most impacted? Which industries do we think are going to be affected? I don't know, Eric, from your point of view, where you're seeing industry being impacted.
Well, the obvious one is anything that has to do with travel. The travel ban impacting, all I would imagine the railroads in Europe, the restrict goods being transported between countries. It's going to affect household goods storage companies, hospitality and travel related, filtering down into the hospitality, all the myriad, food, that feed those things. We see oil and gas being hit for a complete, but adding, to the perfect storm.
Eric, if I can come in, I'm getting comments on LinkedIn that people unfortunately can't hear you and the quality of your video isn't good. So what I'm going to do is, if I remove you from the stream, then maybe you could try and reconnect in a few minutes' time, and we'll see if we can get you back with a better connection. But meanwhile, I'll carry on the debate on my own, if I may. So I'm sorry about that. Benefits of technology, and obviously we're talking about a major crisis that's going on, and we're going to have to work with remote working, and it shows that remote working isn't always that good. So yes, I got messages out there. Someone said Eric's Connect is horrible, guys, and we hear that, and we've changed it. And someone saying it, hearing every other word. For some reason, my connection is good and Eric's isn't, but hopefully Eric will be back in shortly. Anyway, we got the connection better. What I do want to do, we've talked about the industries that are going to be impacted, and that's the first thing that I want to talk about. Now, the reality is that, as Eric was saying earlier, there are some industries that are going to be more impacted than others. And a really big one here is actually going to be the hospitality industry. I saw a report just today that said that they estimate that 50 million jobs, that's right, 50 million jobs may be lost in the hospitality and the leisure and the travel industry. And we've seen that. I mean, again, I saw just today, just in my own country, in the UK, British Airways has just announced a series of layoffs, and I suspect we're going to be seeing a lot more of that, which is very sad. We're seeing that all over the place now. We're seeing those job losses, and those job losses, unfortunately, are going to be with us for the conceivable future. So that's one industry. Of course, another industry that we know has been affected is the events industry, and that's been a really major issue. A lot of major events have been cancelled. I know the Boston Marathon's been cancelled, the NFL, the NHL, the Premier League in the UK. We're seeing a lot of those being cancelled. But even in our industry, we're seeing a lot of our own events are being cancelled. I heard just yesterday, the European Relocation Association, they've cancelled their Seville in Spain, their annual conference. And that is so sad, because someone like Euro, it's a fabulous organization, it's a not-for-profit. They depend on the money from their conference. And they say on their website that, if they can't keep some of that money that people have given them, they may actually end up folding. Hopefully they won't, and hopefully everybody will get behind them. I mean, they're such a great organization. But we're seeing that. We're seeing this all coming through for everybody. So I'm looking at some of the comments that we're getting. We're getting loads of comments coming through. A lot of people, Jennifer Connell, working from home, not formal protocol for us as yet in response to COVID. Kimberly Isaac, it will be a huge financial crisis, especially for airlines. Liesel Havacek, small business in the US are going to take a huge hit. And that's a really big issue, actually. The larger companies may be able to survive this. The smaller companies, you look at the restaurants, the bars, the small retailers, they're really going to struggle. And you've got to remember that for companies like that, it is the marginal income that is their profit. They make a certain amount of money that covers their cost, and it's the extra money that means they can survive in business. And certainly in Spain, where I am, and in Italy and in other countries, they're ordering, restaurants and bars and various shops, other than food shops and pharmacies, to close. That is going to be a major problem for all of us. So we are going to see this as some form of short-term impact on business. I mean, this is going to be a major challenge. It's also, I think, going to be a major challenge in our industry itself. And that's why I want to get this down to our industry and what's going on there. Because that's going to be a real problem in our sector. I see Eric is with me again. I'm going to try once more, see if we can get Eric in and hopefully have better quality. Eric.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's try again for a second, Eric. I've got a feeling it. No, I'm sorry, Eric. I think we're going to have to leave it. I'm afraid the quality is not coming. I do apologize. I think that's probably Eric is on his ranch out in California, and I suspect that out in the rural areas where he is, he's just not getting that level of coverage, which is a terrible shame. So. Again, I think, this is an issue for small companies. It's an issue for large companies in certain sectors and for small companies. But I want to get onto the impact actually in the mobility profession itself. I mean, and one of the questions I'd like to ask is, are you seeing a reduction in the number of initiations? I'm sure you're seeing a reduction in the number of business travelers, but are you seeing a reduction in the number of initiations? I mean, I look at it from a Benivo perspective, and if you'd asked me 2 days ago, I would have said we haven't seen any reduction in initiations at all. But in the last day or so, we've had some clients who are saying they've had a complete ban, no new initiations, no new relocations for the moment. So, maybe that is going to be an issue that we're going to face. And I feel sorry then again for some of the RMCs and some of the DSPs who, if we do find a really short spike or a quick spike in, or whatever the opposite of a spike is, going down, a nadir in a dip in the number of new people going on assignment. Again, that could become a real issue for many in the mobility profession, and we may find that companies have to run for cover in our industry. So, I mean, in terms of the impact, obviously the biggest impact is going to be on business travel. I would guess that business travel at the moment is pretty close to zero. If we'd gone back a few weeks, the planes were full, business travelers were going. At the moment, probably most people have been told in their organizations, no business travel unless absolutely essential. And even if you haven't been told by your employer, the chances are you may be told by your spouse or your parents, or indeed your kids, to say, maybe now's not the time to see business travel. I suppose one of the questions, are there areas of the industry of the world that are booming? Are there sectors that are going to boom through this? You can make jokes and say, well, maybe the deep cleaning industry is doing well. Maybe there are other sectors. Maybe the toilet tissue area is doing well. The makers of paracetamol are doing well. But by and large, for most of us and most of the industries that we are in, I think we are seeing a very, very severe, very, very sharp downturn. Other areas that are booming, and I'm getting this from, who's fed this through, from Jennifer Connell, companies that deliver streaming service and support virtual work environment. I mean, that is a huge area. Companies like Zoom, for example, are presumably getting a real uptick into people taking on their services. Also, I think we're going to see a lot more online buying. So, people maybe who didn't use Amazon in the past or food delivery services, we're going to see a lot more of that coming through. I've talked about Zoom and virtual working. Those sorts of people are going to be doing well. Anybody who's supporting remote working, delivery services, those sorts of sectors are going to be doing well. Now, here's my prediction. I think this is, I think it's quite an interesting one, is that because more people are going to be using it during this spike that we're seeing at the moment, when it's over in, say, 3 or 6 months' time, and hopefully it is over that point, I think what we're going to see is those learnings are going to carry on. So if people are remote working now, I think in a year's time, you may still be doing a lot more remote working. So I think we may actually see a bit of a paradigm shift here at all. So let me look at some of the other issues here. This is one that I get asked about. Now, once upon a time, back in the day, I used to give tax advice. These days I don't. I've been out of the tax industry for a long, long time. I don't give tax advice, but there clearly are tax implications for what's going on at the moment. And let me just run through a few thoughts I think that those of you in the global mobility profession should be thinking about. A couple of scenarios. Imagine that you have someone who's on business travel, and because he's in lockdown wherever he is or she is, what we find then is that they go over their 183 days or 90 days or whatever tax trigger that they've got. You may find that you've got a situation where somebody is triggering a tax liability in some overseas country that you hadn't planned for. Conversely, if you're pulling people back, you may find that you're triggering tax liabilities back for them in their home country. Now, again, I'm not giving any tax advice, but let me just give you a scenario. As I remember things, and hopefully I'm still right on this, is that if you leave, I'm taking the UK as an example here, if you leave the UK, then you are treated as not being tax resident from the day you leave, provided you stay out of the country for a complete tax year. Okay. Well, what about somebody who comes back now because they don't want to stay? As I said, I'm in Spain. It doesn't apply to me because I'm only there for a short time. But coming back to the UK before 6th of April, well, I might just have actually created a situation where I find that I was actually then not tax resident at all. These are issues that you should be looking into and discussing with your tax advisors. The other issue, of course, is visas. What about visas? What about a situation where you've got an employee who has overstayed their welcome in a country, they've overstayed their terms of their visa because they're in lockdown? Okay. Now, I think hopefully governments around the world will take a relaxed approach about this. But again, my message out to the immigration consultants out there is, one, please can you advise your clients? My message out to the clients is, please can you think about it and discuss it with your immigration consultants? And to both of you, maybe this is an area where we should be lobbying government. I'm getting some more comments in that I'll read through. Someone said, we've seen assignments, this is Louise Warby from KPMG, we've seen assignments in the pipeline, but not yet started, having their start date postponed. Somebody else said, from a business travel person, this is Paul Spencer, has said, we're 90% down, 90% down. Other people are saying they're doing well, grocery stores, Uber Eats is probably doing quite well. Giovanni De Carlo said Netflix is booming. So, lots of things are coming through. Other issues I just wanted to discuss. What do we think about the impact on RMCs? Okay, RMCs, I think some of them have had a fairly torrid couple of years. I mean, many have been booming, but some have had a torrid couple of years because of pressures on price, pressures on volume, reductions of traditional assignments in favor of short-term, the cost of technology, the weight of procurement coming in. This is going to be another major problem for RMCs, because, as we've said, numbers are going down, and it's hard for the RMCs themselves in terms of how they actually structure their business. I'm wishing all the RMCs well, I would ask all the corporates out there, please support your RMCs at this difficult time. But I think it will be hard. I was having a conversation with Eric before we started and before we had problems with his video, and he was saying, he made the point that from a corporate's perspective, if somebody phoned up as a salesperson right now, he would be saying, I just don't want to talk to you. Please don't do any sales pitches at the moment. I've got so many other things to do with. Now's not the time to do sales. So again, from an RMC's point of view, or other people in the industry, DSPs, etc., it's a difficult time because the shutters are going up from the corporate perspective. That brings me on to another point here, which relates to it, is business continuity. As global mobility professionals, we have a duty to ensure that we can manage our assignees as they go overseas, as we bring them back. One of the issues you should be considering as a global mobility professional is not just your own business continuity plan, but the business continuity plan of your RMC. And if I was a corporate today, I would be phoning up my RMC and say, can we see your business continuity plan? For example, if we find that everybody has got to work from home, can you do it as an RMC, indeed as a tax provider, an immigration provider, as a DSP? How are we going to handle our assignees if you are in lockdown too, or you're working remotely? So that's an issue I think that that we as global mobility professionals need to address. I'm looking at other comments that are coming through. I've got here Louise Warby from KPMG. It's surely a matter of time before the tax authorities grant carefully worded tax exemptions for those in exceptional circumstances. It's not unprecedented with other exceptional circumstances. I quite agree, Louise, on that. And indeed, I remember at the time of the SARS epidemic, at which time I was actually a partner at EY, we lobbied HMRC for a tax exemption for people returning early because of SARS. I'm hoping that somebody out there, as I said, I don't do tax anymore, but I'm hoping that somebody out there will start lobbying not just the HMRC, but any other government around the world where this might be relevant, to ensure the relevant tax exemptions are in place. And again, my plea to the immigration advisors is, again, can we lobby government to ensure that we don't find that people are going to find that they've invalidated their visas because they've overstayed through no fault of their own. Another issue that I think is worth discussing is duty of care. As global mobility professionals, well, as organizations, we have a duty of care, but as global mobility professionals, we need to understand how that works down to our own assignees. And do we treat our own assignees differently to the local hires? So let's say you have assignees on assignment in, say, Italy at the moment, but you've also got a big local population. What is your duty of care towards your assignees compared to your duty of care towards your local population? Again, I'm afraid lots of questions, no answers, but I would urge you to look at these. I want to move on to a different topic. I want to move on to the topic of long-term consequences. How do we think this is going to play out for our world and our profession? And maybe I'll try and start off by talking about our world, and I'll be very interested in the comments that that you come through to me with as we go through that. But in terms of our world, and I sort of touched on this earlier, this current crisis is changing the way that we all work. I mean, I think most of us on this call are working from home at the moment, and many of our organisations are saying that that working from home is what to be done. Interestingly, I think companies are going further than governments. There's some governments that have said, everybody works from home, no gatherings, etc. Other countries are not saying that. But even when the countries aren't saying it, the companies are taking a lead, the organizations are taking a lead. So as we all get used to working from home, as we all get used to some of these things, like, as I said, delivery, Amazon, purchases, etc., long term, I think we're going to see that. I think that's going to come through long term. So we are going to see a paradigm shift in the way that people work, because at the moment, I don't know what the uptake is, but let's say 25% of people purchase most of their shopping online. I've got no idea if that statistic is right. That might uptick to 30 or 35% post this. So I think we're going to see that sort of thing coming in, fairly quickly, and that is going to change the way that we all look at the work, that we all look at the world. I think it's also going to impact us in our own profession. I think it's going to impact the way the mobility profession works. I think what we're going to see is a lot more technology coming down the turnpike. Now, I work with a tech startup, or maybe not so much a startup anymore, but Benivo, and I know many of you know Benivo. We are a tech company. We believe in tech. Everything we do is tech. But I do think that the future is going to be increasingly digital, because people are going to get over that. People are going to have to go more digital over the next few months. And I think they're going to be looking for more digital solutions as we go forward. Now, what that means from a mobility professional's point of view is you probably have to invest a lot more in technology and be more up to speed and more ready to adapt. It may be in ways that we don't really imagine. I mean, things like home surveys, where someone goes in and does your survey. Obviously, we're seeing a lot of those being done virtually and not somebody coming around to your house anymore. Maybe the percentage uptake on that will move up a lot more. Maybe we'll see a lot less look-see trips. Maybe a lot more of those will be digital trips. Maybe we'll see a lot more moving to, and okay, I know I've got a vested interest in this, but maybe we'll see a lot more digital destination solutions and a lot less traditional destination solutions. So we're getting lots of interesting things coming in, lots of interesting new developments here. Let me move on to some other topics. What I want to do is maybe just sort of ask you this question: do you have a pandemic plan in place? Okay. Now, my view is that every company today, large or small, should actually have a pandemic plan in place. So maybe let me throw that question out there. Is that something your organizations do have? Do you have a pandemic plan? And what would a pandemic plan be? What would that do? Well, let me just talk through some things you might have for a pandemic plan. First of all, do you have a plan for each site? I mean, you might work in 2 or 3 sites around the country. You might work in in thousands of sites around the world as an organization. But actually, you in global mobility, which is what they're focusing on today, do you have a pandemic plan for your global mobility function? So for example, how are you going to communicate? Are you putting social distancing in place? Do you have a plan for remote working? Basic stuff. Do you have enough laptops that everybody can work remotely on a laptop? Do you have a plan for the basic stuff? Sanitizers. Hey, I've got my Spanish sanitizer here that I brought with, that I've been using non-stop. But do you have that? Do you have temperature checks in your organization? Do you have a policy for sending employees home? What is that policy? I think every organization needs to have a pandemic plan for not just the organization, but down to a functional level. Other questions, I think, what about this? Are you looking at repatriating assignees? Is that something that you've been dealing with? And again, I'd love to know what people are starting to do. I'm guessing, I've heard companies say, and we're getting that in the comments, I've heard companies saying that their initiations are going down, but I'm guessing that repatriations are going up, and we're going to be seeing a lot more of that. I mean, this virus has been going on since January. It started, didn't it? The 1st of January or 31st of December in Wuhan, and has spread since then. So we're now, middle of March. So we've had, 2.5 months to think about it. But I'm guessing we're going to start seeing some more and more repatriations coming through. Some of the issues that I think you should be, if you haven't done, you should be asking about. What is your work from home policy? Maybe is it informal? It sounds, again, listening to people on this call, a lot of people are saying that it's informal. There's a work from home policy. Others are saying we've got a formal work from home policy. Other comments I'm getting through, the comments, the way this sort of live stream works on LinkedIn, and don't blame me, blame LinkedIn, is that the comments I get seem to come in about 3 or 4 minutes after I've made a point. So I'm going to have to keep going back on stuff. Lisa Johnson here from Crown. This crisis has pushed companies, industries, and certain parts of the world who've been resistant to agile work strategies to take it on finally. That's a great point, Lisa. That's a really great point. And I think, one of the points here is that if ever there's a silver lining to this horrendous cloud, and it is an awful cloud, but there is a silver lining, it is actually making those companies that have been slow to adopt modern working practices move towards modern working practices. Clearly, again, a point that Kimberly Isaac is making. There's some work in the government that cannot be done from home. Folk will either be considered critical and forced to come in with protocols, or they will be furloughed, I think. That's the issue. Clearly there are some sectors where, you cannot work from home. I'm hopefully taking a plane home tomorrow from Spain back to the UK. I don't think my pilot can work from home. There's going to be lots of other areas where people can't work from home. But where people can work from home, I think we're going to see a lot more of that. Other comments here. I've got one from Gareth Davis. Gareth from Equus Software. Governments will need to rethink strategy on tech access to all and countrywide coverage. Yeah, I think that's a really big issue. Certainly some of the revenue authorities around the world are really reluctant to use email, for example, as basic as that. So I think we are going to see an absolute paradigm shift in the way that that people work. What I want to do, we're getting towards the end of this time. Hopefully you found it useful, but to get really sort of the most out of this is what I want to end up with is talking about action steps that you should be taking now. What is it that you, as a global mobility professional, should be doing right here, right now? And here are my thoughts on some quick action steps to take. Nobody knows the answer. We know that we are in uncharted territory. Nobody knows how long this thing is going to last. I heard somebody earlier today say, well, if you want a comparable pandemic, look at Spanish flu. And the thing about Spanish flu is it came in waves. We're talking in 1917. It came in waves, and the first wave, it was horrendous, then it stopped, then it mutated, then it came back, then it mutated, and it came in 4 different waves and lasted 2 years. Now, the good news is, I think that technology has moved on so that this pandemic is happening much quicker than one in 1917 did. People didn't travel in the same way they do now, so it wasn't being spread so quickly. But also science was much slower. So I'm actually pretty optimistic that we will have a vaccine. It may be 3 months or so, or 6 months, but we will have that. There must be scientists all over the world doing nothing but working on vaccines at the moment. So, hopefully this pandemic will peak much, much quicker than the Spanish flu one did, and will be over much quicker. So, but what the peak, on the other hand, will be very severe because it's happening so quickly. So what are the action steps we should be taking? Well, here are my 7 or 8 different action steps. Number 1, make sure you understand the entrance and exit rules of whichever country you are sending people to. I'm using the word entrance and exit rules because I'm not just talking about visa rules, I'm talking about travel rules. As we've seen, countries like, the United States has got a travel ban in place for certain countries, Russia's got a travel ban in place, Italy's got a travel ban in place, Lebanon, Israel, countries throughout the Middle East, many countries have got travel bans. And the interesting thing is they're all different, okay? Which means we need to understand what those travel bans are. The other thing is they're changing day by day, in some cases several times a day. So we just need to make sure that we are up to date, and you need to make sure that you've got a source of information where you can understand the travel bans for, the hotspot countries that you are dealing with. Obviously, you also need to be in very close contact with your immigration provider to make sure you understand the visa rules as well, and the registration rules. A number of countries now, you've got to register on arrival in ways you didn't before, notify or self-isolate on arrival. The other part that it would be in the action plan, and I know we always bang on about this as mobility professionals, but now I think it's more so than ever, is you need to know what employees you've got and in what locations. How many employees do you have on assignment? I'm assuming for the moment that business travelers are being dealt with by somebody else in your business travel department, but if you're dealing with business travelers, you've got an even bigger problem. But let's just look at assignees. How many assignees do you have? Where are they? What sort of assignments are they on? What sort of visa are they on? Not just who's there, but who are their sort of family members who are there with them, dependents, spouses, partners, kids, some cases even staff they might have with them. What are the nationalities of the people who are there? Not just your assignee, but what are the nationalities of the, of the partner, for example? Obviously, you need to make sure that the contact details you've got are up to date with these people, so that if you do need to pull people out of a location or give them advice on what they need to do, medical advice, immigration advice, tax advice, personal advice, heaven forbid, personal safety advice, you can contact them quickly. Another point I would say is, do you have some form of intranet or some form of helpline or website set up so that these people can contact you? You will have a lot of very, very worried assignees out there who are worrying about what they should do. Should they stay? Should they come home? They might be under pressure, not just from themselves, but they might be under pressure from their parents back home or from their spouse that might be with them, saying, I don't want to stay in wherever. Get me out of Italy. Get me out of Spain, get me out of wherever I am at the moment on assignment. And they might be begging you to come back. Now, I don't know what policy your company is taking, but you need to understand what that policy is. But most importantly, I think you need to have a really good communication strategy. So you need to have some form of intranet or helpline or something. Hopefully most of you have got that, but if you haven't, I would urge you to build that really, really quickly. I've talked earlier about tax and immigration and the problems with maybe trigger dates, overstaying 183 day rule or something, or overstaying a visa rule. Again, I think the point I'll be making here is you should be aware of what those trigger dates are. It may well be you've got it all on spreadsheets somewhere. It may well be you've got it through your technology system, but wherever you've got it, make sure it's really up to date. Make sure you're flagging the issues that might be there, because you might have people that were expecting to come home but aren't now. Another point I'd say from the global mobility profession's point of view is establish how well you can work from home. If you haven't done so already, I would suggest you do a dry run. Have a practice run of what it's like if everybody works from home in your global mobility function. You can either do it on a shift basis, so you say, well, these days half the people work from home, these days, the other half will be working from home. Or you can just say, let's have a practice week, and in that practice week, we'll know where we are. So those are some of the issues that I want to take in terms of action steps. In terms of what's going to happen longer term, what are the longer term issues? Well, I've talked about the fact I think we're going to see a lot more stuff going digital. I call it digital mobility. I think we're going to be seeing that. But I think there's other issues. And we talked about focus on technology. I think there's another issue out there. I think we're going to see a big focus on cost as well. Companies are going to have a horrendous year. And we all know that expats are, to put it bluntly, expensive. Well, I think what we're going to find going forward is companies are saying, well, yes, we might have to send people out again in future, but we've got to do it on a really cheap basis. So I think we're going to see a big push now much more towards lump sum or core flex, people really skinnying down their program, and maybe corporates pushing the mobility profession to put their RMCs under pressure to cut cost. Now, the way I look at it is the cost of the RMC itself tends to be fairly minor. What costs the money is the cost of the actual package. So, for example, housing is expensive, travel is expensive, shipping is expensive. I think those are the areas where we're going to start seeing a real pushback from companies as they're trying to recover from this completely unexpected shock, and they're trying to manage their shareholders and deliver as much profit as they can. So I would say be prepared for that. Be prepared for the shock coming down the road when people tell you, sharpen your budget, we've got to find a cheaper way to do mobility. Because I think we're going to see that coming, not immediately. At the moment, it's all about, reducing initiations, increasing repatriations. It's all about safety. It's about fear. But the longer term implication, I think, is going to be a big pushback on cost. That, I think, also means that you're going to need to use technology a lot more because, again, technology is where you can save cost. So the RMCs on the call, I would say really do look at what you can do to transform your business so you're using more technology and less people on the ground. To the corporates out there, I would say look at how you can use technology and technology solutions, again, to keep costs down, because I think that is going to be a really, really big pressure that we're going to have. And the other question, of course, is how long is it going to take for assignee volumes to go back to what they were back in the good old days of 2019? We're going to see initiations go down this year quite dramatically, I'm sure. And as somebody said on the call, business travel is probably down 90%. But even if we put business travel to one side, I think we're going to see initiations go down quite dramatically this year. Okay, so the question then is, how can we deal with that? Because it's going to start creeping up again. But it will take a couple of years, I think, to start creeping up. So what can we do from a mobility point of view to look after the ones we've got and to deliver a service to them more efficiently and cheaper? So I suppose what I'm saying is that, we've got this spike. The spike will be hard, but then after the spike, there will be residual issues that we need to address. What I would say, really, and I'm starting to finish up now, is that I think memories will fade. We will get through this. Although we're looking at this as a health crisis now, I think when we look at the larger implications, we're going to see this as a financial crisis. I think many more people are going to go bankrupt than, please God not, but die. We are going to see a lot of bankruptcies coming. We're going to see a financial crisis. We're in a financial crisis. But memories fade. I am old enough to have been around a few financial crises before. We always get over them. So let's finish up on an optimistic note. Memories fade. What I think we need to do as professionals, and indeed as individuals, is to use those memories and to learn from those memories. So, for example, we need to remember longer term the focus that we're putting in now on illness, on prevention, on hygiene, and on ways of, the learnings we get as we learn to work more efficiently and more digitally. I think we need to focus on that going forward. And as I said, I think we are going to get a vaccine fairly soon. So on a health point of view, I am going to be an optimist here. So that's pretty much all I wanted to cover off on this live cast. I hope you've enjoyed it. We've had literally hundreds and hundreds of comments. I shouted out to many of you. There's plenty more that haven't had a chance. But thank you so much to everybody who's been on this very special edition of The View from the Top, Coronavirus and Global Mobility. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's been, it's pretty hard times out there for everybody. You know, and I suspect, you know, many of us, you know people now who've self-isolated, but we are going to get over that. You know, if we take somebody famous who's self-isolating at the moment, there's Tom Hanks out there. You know, Tom Hanks is going to be just fine, and we're going to see Tom Hanks in a couple of weeks' time, and he'll have got over it, and you know, and the world will get back to normal. And I think, you know, please God, and I think that, you know, they will develop a vaccine, and I think they will develop it in rapid time. So I think from a health point of view, we are going to get over this fairly quickly. I certainly pray and hope that we do. I think, however, that what we are going to get is we are going to get a financial a crisis out there. But again, we are going to get over that. And the long-term future, I think we're going to find, is that things that have happened are going to make us a lot more digital. The last thing I just want to say to finish up is, I'm afraid we started off pretty poorly in terms of the quality of the video, and there was a problem with Eric, who was in rural Northern California, and we didn't get on his olive farm, his olive ranch, and we didn't get the quality of the video. I do apologize for that. But also, I just wanted to have a big shout out to Eric. I know how disappointed he is that he couldn't stay on the web call, but he was really helpful, and he's really helpful in the thinking that we did when we pre-planned this. So thank you, everybody. And at this point, I just wanted to say, everybody stay safe, stay well, and we'll all get through this the other side. Take care, everybody.